Jr. and Ryan LC for the people.
Dominic DeGrazia on behalf of the people.
And Brian Brown on behalf of Mr. Jackson-Bolanos.
Good afternoon, Judge. I'm on behalf of Mr. Jackson-Bolanos.
And I know for the record, Mr. Jackson-Bolanos is present as counsel and 15 murders in return to us this afternoon. Juror number one was not feeling well. Had told us yesterday she was feeling well, but today, I guess she was feeling worse and wanted to get to her care. And so she has been excused from the jury. We only have 3 alternates, so everyone please try to stay healthy. And hopefully get through the trial without losing all our alternates. Juror number 9, if you want to sit down and juror 1 seat, or we can wipe it down so you don't rush me past. And then you just have to sit on the floor there. There's some large right now. Just wipe down. Raise your hand. You lost your pen? Okay, then we'll do it next. We're going to write down seat number 1, so Jared and I can sit there and have a better view of the TV and stuff. There. And now we're ready to proceed, and Mr. Illustrator, the person that is replaced, presumably placed on the stand, continue with your cross-examination.
All right, thank you. Now, you indicated during direct that you typically use your car when you go to the grocery store, correct?
Yes, that's
Okay.
correct.
Sometimes do you ride a bike to the grocery store?
I don't believe I've ever ridden my bike to the grocery store.
Okay. So in an atypical situation, how would you get to the grocery store if you were not in your car?
I would walk to the grocery store.
You would walk to the grocery store? Okay. You do a lot of walking?
Yes.
Okay. So approximately how far is the grocery store from your house?
It depends on which grocery store you're talking about. Honeybee is, I'd say maybe 2 miles from my house, but I would probably go to, there's a Mexican grocery store that's less than 2 blocks away from my house that I would walk to.
Okay. Have you ever walked to Samantha's house?
No.
You never walked?
No.
Okay. Have you ever rode your bike to Samantha's house?
No.
Do you own a bike?
Yes.
Okay. And that bike is fully functional?
Yes.
Now, these Arlo cameras, you stated you had 2 cameras, correct?
Yes, there was a camera that was mounted up above the front door, and there was a camera that was mounted above the rear door.
Okay. And you're saying was as a past tense?
Yes, they were taken down.
Okay. How were they taken down?
I don't know.
And where were they placed when they were taken down?
So the police searched my house, and after the police searched my house, those cameras were no longer mounted.
Okay. So prior to the police searching your house, the cameras were mounted?
Yes.
Okay. And you indicated that the batteries ran out of the cameras?
Yes, you have to charge them regularly, and I just stopped charging them.
Okay. When is the last time that you charged the batteries?
I'm not certain. I looked in my email, and I got an email warning me that the battery was low on August 2022.
And you haven't changed the battery since then?
No.
Okay. And you stated that one of the purposes of you installing those cameras is to monitor your front porch, correct?
Yes, that was the purpose. Yes.
Okay. Now, when you remember being in the Detroit Detention Center, the DDC, correct?
Yes.
Okay, and you were taken to the DDC, which is in Detroit, after being transported from Kalamazoo's police station, correct?
That's correct.
Okay. And while at the Detroit Detention Center, you made some phone calls to your parents, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And would it be a fair statement that while you was at the DDC, your parents never asked you why you were being held or detained, correct?
I don't recall.
You don't recall? Okay. You never told them why you were being detained. You would agree to that, though, right?
Yes, I believe that's correct.
Okay. You were also under the understanding that your friend Marvin was talking to a judge that they knew while you were incarcerated to try to help you out. You knew about that, didn't you?
I'm not familiar with Marvin.
You're not familiar with Marvin's friend, the judge? You don't know who Marvin is?
I don't know who Marvin is.
So you never had a conversation about Marvin and their friend, the judge, helping you out?
I don't know Marvin. You may be referring to a Martin.
Oh, Martin. Okay. I'm sorry. Martin. So you were under the understanding that Martin's friend was a judge and they were trying to help you out behind the scenes on this case, correct?
They may have said something to that effect, yes.
You also told your parents to contact your job, right?
Yes.
The job that you were scared about losing, correct?
Yes.
And you told your parents to tell your job that you had a nervous breakdown and you needed some time off, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And this is while you were incarcerated, correct? At the DDC.
Because I told my parents to tell my job that I was having a nervous breakdown?
No, to be clear. You were incarcerated at the Detroit Detention Center when you told your parents to contact your job and tell them that you had a nervous breakdown, correct?
Yes, I believe that's true.
Okay. But it wasn't true that, in fact, you had a nervous breakdown and you needed time off. You were incarcerated, correct?
I believe both can be true. I believe that I had an adverse reaction to a medication that caused me to have a panic attack, a nervous breakdown.
So to you, a nervous breakdown and a panic attack, they're synonymous? They mean the same?
Again, I'm not that kind of doctor. I don't know the specific language to use in that situation.
But
it seems reasonable to call it a nervous breakdown.
But you said that, though. You just said this right now that the two could be the same as far as you being incarcerated and having a nervous breakdown. So do you feel that way? That they're the same? Based upon what you told your parents?
They're the same?
You said they both could be true. I'm sorry. They both can be true. Do you believe that was an honest statement?
I believe that they both can be true.
Okay. That was the only time you've ever mentioned having a nervous breakdown through this whole ordeal is when you told your parents to contact your job and tell them you had a nervous breakdown. Isn't that true?
I believe I mentioned I was having a panic attack. I mentioned I had a panic attack multiple times. To me, those are synonymous. Maybe you haven't consider them different.
Okay, so now you said, because I just asked you. I just asked you whether or not you felt that a panic attack and a nervous breakdown were synonymous. And you indicated you're not that type of doctor. You just said that, right?
That's right.
Okay, so now you're saying in your mind that a panic attack and a nervous breakdown are synonymous?
Yes.
Now, during your conversation with the police, you never indicated that you felt you were having a nervous breakdown. Isn't that true?
I believe I mentioned that I was having a panic attack several times.
That's not my question,
during
sir. Sir, I'm sorry. I may be a little bit confusing. My question is, you never told the police that you felt you were having a nervous breakdown. That's true, isn't it?
I never used those specific words.
And when you told your parents, you never instructed your parents to contact your job and tell them, I'm having a panic attack and I need days off. Isn't that true?
That's correct. I did not use those specific words.
Okay. Now, you never told your parents to tell your job that you were incarcerated, did you?
No, I did not.
Okay. And you also did not tell your parents to tell your job that you needed days off because you were incarcerated because you admitted to murder. Isn't that true?
That is true.
Now, did you ever have a key to Samantha's place?
No,
Okay. But you knew she had a spare key, correct?
that's correct. And I told the police that,
And you knew where that spare key was located, didn't you?
yes, and I told the police that information.
Now, did you know that she had an alarm system?
You know, she never used the alarm system. It didn't even register to me that she had it. I can't recall whether I said yes or no to that question.
Isn't it true that you told the police that, to your understanding, she did not have an alarm system?
Yes.
Okay. Now, how many times have you ever spent the night or visited? How many times have you ever visited Samantha's house?
Over 10.
Over 10? Okay. So when she opened the door, you never heard an audible sound, front door open?
It was never armed.
That's not, I didn't ask you if it was armed. Have you ever, upon entering the house, ever heard an audible chime saying front door open?
Not to my recollection.
Okay. Have you ever entered through the back door?
Yes.
Have you ever came over late at night?
Yes.
Have you ever came to the back door late at night?
Only with Samantha.
Have you ever came over her house to visit with Samantha and came to the back door at night?
No.
Do you own a North Face jacket?
Yes.
Okay, and what color is it?
Black.
Black. Now, of course, you understand what use immunity is, correct? That basically the prosecutor cannot use whatever you say while you're on the stand against you in any subsequent, if ever, subsequent proceedings, correct? And you weren't going to testify without that, right? Without that immunity being in place, correct?
I'm not a lawyer. I am following the advice of my counsel.
Okay. Are you a runner?
As
As a hobby. As a hobby.
I used to run, and since Samantha's death, I've taken up running again.
Taking up running again. But prior to her death, you were an avid walker. You would agree to that, right?
That's correct.
Okay. And you continue to walk, correct?
Yes.
So, as of now, you are an avid walker and a runner. Would that be a fair statement?
Yes.
As well as a biker?
Yes.
A bicyclist?
Yes.
Okay. Now, you would agree that during your different interviews with the police, they treated you very kindly, didn't they?
They were respectful, yes.
Okay. And they offered you water, they offered you snacks multiple times per interview, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And even one detective to your understanding, made a comment to you about it's been a pleasure speaking with you. And this was while you was in Kalamazoo, correct?
I don't recall that, but
Okay.
if it's possible.
Okay. Now, on Saturday, the day of Samantha's death, you had consumed some alcohol, correct? Or you told the officers you consumed some alcohol? On Saturday, October the 21st. The 22nd, I'm sorry, 22nd. Which would have been Sunday, I believe. I'm sorry, which would have been Sunday. Did you indicate that you left synagogue, you came home to watch a football game, Penn State versus, I'm not sure who they were playing. Does this ring a bell?
I'm confused about which day you're talking about.
The day Penn State was playing, which they're college, so I would assume that.
I went to synagogue on Friday.
Oh, Friday, okay.
And yeah, I'm sorry. You're gonna have to restate the question.
Okay. Did you go to synagogue the day that you found out that Samantha had died, which would have been the next day, which would have been October the 21st?
No.
Okay, you did not?
No.
Okay. So which days did you go to synagogue between October the 20th to October 22nd?
I went so I went that Friday night, and then I did go Saturday afterwards, to meet with friends.
Yes, yes, sir. Thank you.
Okay.
So you did go that Saturday.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. And after you left some synagogue on that Saturday, you went back home and you watched the football game, Penn State, correct?
No, that happened before. That was a noon game.
Oh, that was a noon game? Okay. But after you left synagogue, you eventually went home and you had some alcohol, correct?
Yes, I believe that's correct.
Okay. So you're saying, sir, that did you consume alcohol while you were watching the sports game?
The football game?
Yes. Oh,
in the afternoon.
at any time during that day.
So I had alcohol after I went home from synagogue later that night, but not during the day. No.
You didn't? Okay. So you never told the detectives that you had alcohol while watching the game?
Judge objection. I think we're talking about two different games.
What games?
I mean,
I've never seen this.
I don't recall having had alcohol during the game. If I did, I had a beer, but I don't recall that.
Okay. And had you went through a spell of consuming alcohol around that particular time, maybe a 2-week span around that particular time frame of consuming alcohol?
No, I didn't have the spell of consuming alcohol.
Okay. Do you frequently consume alcohol then?
On occasion, I have 1 to 2 drinks.
Okay. And didn't you tell the officer in Kalamazoo that you do not drink because it will react with your antidepressant medicine and you will have basically an adverse reaction? You said that, didn't you?
I may have said that I had 1 beer that night.
No. My question is, when you and the officer were sitting at the table just having small talk, you told the officer that in fact you cannot drink because you're taking antidepressants, correct?
Yeah. Yes.
Okay. You never told the officer that I occasionally have a beer or two, correct? You didn't say that.
That's correct.
Thank you. No further questions.
Sir, Saturday night, 21st, did Michigan and Michigan State play that day?
Saturday night, the 21st.
21st of October.
I have no recollection. I wasn't paying attention to football at that point.
Okay. Did you watch? Did you watch more football when you got back from synagogue that particular night on Saturday after learning of Samantha's death?
Again, I may have. I don't. If anything, I was trying to take my mind off of the events of the day. I'm sorry, I don't really recall.
There were some questions about your fear of losing your job when you were in Kalamazoo. Do you remember those questions?
Yes.
And were you afraid of losing your job at that time?
Yes.
And why were you afraid of losing your job?
Because I was at the police station and being arrested doesn't look good for a job.
Did you want your employer to know that you were at the police station?
No.
Why not?
Again, it doesn't look good to be detained.
There were some questions about.
Smile?
Yes, good morning, Rob.
Yeah, oh, it's a good morning now, is it?
Yeah, and finally, Portugal is coming.
Oh,
I was waiting for Portugal. It's one of my 2 favorite with friends, and they have Cristiano. They are talking, but for me, they don't have a real scorer but Cristiano, and then they want to see him starting and scoring as soon as possible.
Imagine, remember the last time we saw Ronaldo on a major soccer stage 2 years ago at the World Cup? During the knockout stages, both games, he was relegated to the bench. Certainly caused a bit of chaos, but here he is, not only with the armband, but back in the starting 11. He's a difference maker.
Absolutely is a difference maker. We're talking about one of the greatest players of all time. It'd be intriguing to see how things develop. Of course, Leao is playing up front with him now, which is, again, another top player in Europe for me. And they've got strength and depth within the squad. So over the course of the tournament, it will be intriguing to see how this all unfolds. But Cristiano Ronaldo is literally one of the greatest players, if not the greatest player of all time.
Yeah, and I think one of the big challenges when you have a new coach, which they do, and Roberto Martinez, who was previously with Belgium, the number one thing has to be, okay, how do you find a way to get Ronaldo involved, keep him happy, and keep the balance of the squad? And I really liked what I've seen from Roberto Martinez. You talked about the stats, 36 goals for, 2 against. But not only that, they play in a much more dynamic way than what we saw from them in the last World Cup. Look, this is a team under Fernando Santos. They won the Euros in 2016, but before that was more structured, more disciplined. Now you're going to see players moving. And I think to your point, Daniel, finally highlighting some of those attacking players that they have.
Yeah, I think the fluidity within the team and also the options they have will create problems for the opposition because they've got so many great players in all these positions. Some of the best players in Europe are in this team right here, so it's going to be
even their bench, by the way.
The bench is a joke, man. It's absolutely ridiculous. They got top players on the bench, like they're not good enough. It's crazy. It's crazy.
But again, the focus is going to be on Ronaldo, and for good reason. And the focus and the cameras found him in Qatar at the World Cup when he was relegated to the bench. His demeanor, his happiness is going to play a big part in Portugal's success or failure.
Yes, but he's arriving in a very different condition.
Okay, and when you had that understanding of why you were there, was that a comfortable or uncomfortable position for you to be in?
It was uncomfortable.
And why was that?
Because I had just gone through a panic attack. I really called 911 to seek medical attention because I was feeling totally out of normal. Again, my heart rate was much higher than usual. I had these thoughts that I couldn't control, and so I was really seeking medical attention at that point.
Now, the things that you said in the 911 call and on the body camera footage, both of which have been admitted as exhibits 27 and 28 respectively, are the things that you said about Samantha, are they true?
The things that I said about what I could have done? No.
Correct, yeah.
No, that is not true.
When you said those things, was it your intent to mislead anybody or lie?
No. I was not trying to mislead anyone. I couldn't control my thoughts at that point and was just very concerned about what was going through my head.
There were some questions about the sort of treatment that you've received from mental health care professionals, is that right? And approximately during the relevant time, how many mental health care professionals have you consulted with?
So at that point, I had a psychologist and a psychiatrist, and since then I've spoken with 2 additional psychiatrists who confirm that this medication causes delusions.
And again, when was it that you started taking this specific medication, Auvelity?
I started a few days before, but I had doubled the dosage the day before.
And was that under the direction of a mental health care professional?
Yes, it was.
And when did you stop taking that medication?
I stopped it in that night. I immediately stopped taking that medication once I had those side effects.
Okay, and after this period of time where you had these thoughts about feeling responsible for Samantha's death, have you had those thoughts at all since then?
No.
Are you in any way responsible for Samantha Woll's death?
No.
And you met with your attorney in advance to testifying today.
That's correct.
Have you also met with myself and Mr. DeGrazia?
We did have a meeting, yes.
Okay. In any of the meetings with either myself or Mr. DeGrazia or your attorney, has anyone directed you to say something specific on the witness stand today?
No.
What was the purpose of you meeting with your attorney before testifying today? Again, I'm not trying to get into attorney-client confidences or anything like that, but what was the overall purpose of you meeting with an attorney before testifying?
So I have never testified before. This is a very difficult subject. It's talking about my mental health and the trauma that I went through, and so it was much more like a coach to help me figure out how to speak and communicate clearly about what I went through and what went on.
And are the answers that you've given today, are those your own answers or are those your attorney's answers?
Those are my answers. And
you understand that according to the order of use immunity, that your testimony has to be truthful for you to be entitled to use immunity?
Yes.
Has there been anything you've said today, to your knowledge, that is not truthful?
I have spoken the truth today.
Thank you, sir.
Well, and can I just follow up, and yesterday, because your testimony started yesterday.
I appreciate that caveat, Your Honor. I forgot.
Can you,
And yeah, and sir, same questions. Your testimony started yesterday, is that correct?
Yes.
During your testimony yesterday, was there anything that you said that was not truthful?
No, I've been truthful both yesterday and today.
Okay, thank you.
Speaking of or thinking about your job, being in the police station Kalamazoo, you said your understanding of being there was that you had a reaction to your medicine. That was your understanding of why you were there?
My understanding was that I had a reaction to this medication, and it caused me to convince myself that I had something to do with Sam's death, and that was why I was brought in. It was not my intent when I called 911 to end up in a police station.
But you did understand what you said. You understood that the police came
Yes.
and they arrested you,
Yes.
and you understood where you were, correct?
Yes.
You didn't have any delusions. You didn't think you were in a zoo, did you?
No.
You didn't think you were at home, did you?
No.
You knew exactly where you were, correct?
Yes.
You knew exactly who you were speaking with, and they were police officers, correct?
Yes.
You didn't think you were talking to your attorney, correct?
Correct.
You didn't think you were talking to your mom, correct?
Correct.
Okay. You were very lucid on where you were and with whom, correct?
Yes.
Now, you indicated that your heart rate was abnormal.
Abnormal.
What is your normal heart rate? If you know, if without looking, please, sir.
Okay.
Do you know what your normal heart rate is? Yes or no?
I know it's not 150. I have an app that can tell me when your typical heart rate is if
No,
you let me
I'm
access that.
asking, sir, if you know off the top of your head what your own heart rate is, that is normal. If
It's
you know.
typically 60 to 70
60 to 70 what?
beats per minute.
Okay. Are you guessing?
It varies.
It varies? Okay.
Yes, sir.
And it goes up depending on if you're doing some substances like smoking marijuana. It would change, correct?
I don't know if smoking marijuana changes how it changes your heart rate.
But you stated you have an app, correct?
So
You stated you have an app, correct? Yes or no?
I do have it.
Okay.
Yes.
Have you ever tested your heart rate after smoking marijuana?
The app I was referring to is a blood donation app where they test your heart rate and blood pressure when you're donating blood. So I've never smoked marijuana and done that.
Also, so to be clear, you don't have like maybe a body worn watch or something that would I guess, continuously measure your heart rate, correct?
No.
So you're just going by what your heart rate is at the point in time you go to donate blood.
That's correct.
And you get anxious at other times, correct? That would be a fair statement. At certain times you get anxious.
Yes.
So you don't know what your heart rate would be at one of these times where you're feeling anxious, correct?
That's correct.
Now, have you ever convinced yourself of something that you felt wasn't true?
No, I don't believe so.
In regards to the question of whether somebody directed you, indicated nobody directed you on what to say, correct?
That's correct.
Okay, but you did agree during cross-examination there were suggestions presented to you on what to say, correct?
There was assistance, yes.
Suggestions.
Yes.
Thank you. No further questions.
Nothing, Your Honor. Thank you.
Questions from the jury? Right now, counsel approach. So a lot of these questions call for speculation. You can ask them, or it's a question that can be answered by so, but these three we can ask. Do you know the code to Samantha Woll's lockbox on her front door?
No.
Or did you? Have you ever been diagnosed or treated for anything other than depression? Psychologically.
So anxiety as well.
Were you treated by a psychiatrist after being released by the police for your panic attack / delusional thoughts? Was it inpatient or outpatient?
It was outpatient, and yes, I was.
And did the medication side effects happen immediately after doubling the dosage on November 7th, 2023?
No, they did not. So I had doubled the dosage the previous day, and again, I took my second dose around 5:30, 6 o'clock that day, and the onset of abnormal symptoms, it came on around 7 or 8 o'clock, I believe.
So, just to get the timing right, you took a double dose on the 7th,
Yes.
and then you took that same dose, the double dose on the 8th at about 6 o'clock.
So the sixth and the 7th. So the incident happened on the.
Oh, I'm sorry. So you started on the 6th.
That's correct.
And then, that's right, and so the 7th was when you called the police.
Yes.
Oh, 911. So you had a double dose on the 6th in the evening about 6 o'clock as well, or?
Yes.
Okay, and then the next evening, the 7th, you took it again at
Yes.
6 or 7.
Yes.
And then set in an hour later?
Yes, that's when the abnormal thoughts started occurring.
Okay, I just wanted to get the timing right. Any further questions based on those?
No, Your Honor, thank you.
When you took your double dose on the 6th, did you smoke marijuana with that double dose?
No.
You typically smoke marijuana when you use your medication.
For the previous medication, I had found no issues. For this medication, I specifically asked my psychiatrist if it was okay, because I was taking a new med, if I could smoke marijuana, and she said it was okay. And in this case, there may have been an interaction.
Did you have any alcohol on any dosage from the 6th or the 7th?
I had one beer on the 7th, yes, for dinner.
Like IPA?
Yes.
Were you concerned after being released from the Detroit Detention Center that you may want to go into inpatient, since this, in your mind, quote unquote delusion was greater than any other delusion you've ever had?
Yes, that's why I worked with psychiatrists to try and figure out and treat, get treatment for what was going on.
Did you personally feel that you should be an inpatient for the quote unquote severity of this situation?
Yeah. So I stopped the medication, and several days later, the symptoms subsided. So I felt like it was okay not to go to inpatient, but it was something that I discussed with my psychologist and my psychiatrist.
Did you discuss that with your family also?
Yes.
No further questions.
Any further?
No, Your Honor, thank you.
Any further questions from the jury? Okay, thank you. You may step down. Any objections or excuse?
No, Your Honor.
Do we need a break? Or we good to keep going? Gotta keep going.
Your Honor, at this time, the people call Jennifer Swatek.
Afternoon. Please pull the mic close to your mouth. State your name and spell it for the record.
Sure, my name is Jennifer Swatek, first name Jennnifer, last name Swatek.
Thank you, Your Honor. Ma'am, could you tell the jury what you do for a living?
Sure, I am a forensic toxicologist at NMS Labs.
And does NMS Laboratories or NMS Labs have a relationship with the Wayne County Medical Examiner's Office?
Yes, they do.
And what does NMS Labs do for the Wayne County Medical Examiner's Office?
We perform toxicological analyses on bodily specimen.
And as part of that work, does NMS Labs perform toxicological analysis on blood samples in connection with post-mortem examinations?
Yes, they do.
And is that work that you specifically work on as a forensic toxicologist?
Yes, it is.
And can you describe to the jury what the field of forensic toxicology is as sort of a general matter?
Sure. Well, the study of toxicology is just the study of chemicals, drugs, substances, and their effects on the human body. And then forensics now applies it to the law.
Okay. And the sort of methods that are used by yourself and NMS Labs to perform forensic toxicology, are those methods something that are generally accepted in the relevant scientific community?
Yes, they are.
And what sort of training do you have to do the sort of work that you do as a forensics toxicologist?
Well, we can go back to my educational background, where I have a bachelor's of science in forensic biochemistry. I have a master's of science in forensic science. I have my certification with the American Board of Forensic Toxicology, and I've done internal training with NMS Labs on how to perform the analytical procedures that we use and assess the data that is generated and assess and understand the results that are generated.
And how long have you been in this line of work?
I have worked for NMS for 12 years, working specifically in the toxicology department for 5.
Okay, and have you testified as an expert previously in the field of forensic toxicology?
Yes, I have.
Your Honor, if there's no objection, I'd move to have the witness qualified as an expert in the field of forensic toxicology.
Any questions? No? Then Ms. Witness's testimony will be accepted as an expert in the field of forensic toxicology.
And Your Honor, may I publish what was admitted last week through the medical examiner as Exhibit 23?
You may.
Thank you.
And you might want to give her a copy, this doesn't get
Will do.
more easily.
May I approach, Your Honor?
You may.
Ma'am, I'm handing you what's been previously admitted as People's Exhibit 23. Can you tell the jury, just as a general matter, what this document is?
This is a toxicology report issued from NMS Labs.
And who authored this specific report?
This specific report has my signature on it.
And in terms of the toxicology associated with this specific case, were you the first one to author a report for this case?
I was not.
And why is it that you came to author a report for this case?
It is my understanding that based on the interpretation that was needed for this case and the availability and accessibility of having a toxicologist come today, it was reassigned to me.
Okay, and as part of your work in this case, did you take an independent look at the data associated with the blood sample that NMS Labs had?
I did.
And was that blood sample, what was the sort of patient name associated with that blood sample according to the records?
The patient name here is last name Woll, first name Samantha.
Okay, and if we go into the positive findings section of the report, I just want to ask about sort of each positive finding. So where it says caffeine, what sort of information were you able to determine based on the data that you observed when it came to the substance of caffeine?
Essentially, all this is saying is that we reported a presumptive positive off our screening results for caffeine, indicating this individual consumed a caffeinated product at some point.
Okay, and what's the next substance that's indicated there?
Gamma hydroxybutyric acid.
And what is that substance?
Gamma hydroxybutyric acid, we can call it GHB. It can be an endogenous, which means it's found within the body naturally. It can be found endogenously from breakdown of certain neurotransmitters, and it can also be utilized as a sedative hypnotic.
And is there a particular sort of like street name that you're aware of for that particular substance, like that it's commonly known as?
I believe roofies, maybe?
Would that be like the date rape?
Yes.
Date rape drug?
And it has been associated as being a date rape drug.
Okay, and in terms of the result for that specific substance, what is the result there?
We reported a positive result at 8.3 micrograms per milliliter.
And is that result consistent with a endogenous finding or somebody being actually drugged or having ingested GHB?
This would be a finding I would consider to be consistent with endogenous. It could be found, I think, potentially in anybody if we did postmortem analysis for this specific substance.
So if any random person off the street who had never consumed GHB passed away and you analyzed their blood, might you see a level of GHB at around 8.3, like in this report?
Yes, that is possible.
So is there anything significant, in your opinion, about this level of GHB in the blood?
No.
Okay, and how about the other substances? Can we, I guess, go down to the next one?
Sure, the bupropion.
Yes, and what is bupropion?
It is well known as Wellbutrin. It is a antidepressant drug.
Okay, and what does the result tell us, if anything, about that particular substance in the blood?
This results in bupropion in conjunction with its metabolite, hydroxybupropion. This tells me that this individual consumed or was possibly using Wellbutrin.
And when you say metabolite, can you explain to the jury what you mean by that?
Sure. It's just a breakdown product. Just even like if you eat food, you metabolize it. So with like drugs, we metabolize drugs and we break it down. So this is essentially a breakdown product of the bupropion.
Okay, and what about the next substance after the metabolite?
The zolpidem?
Yes.
Yes, the zolpidem, sometimes known as Ambien, can be a sedative hypnotic prescribed to help with sleep.
Okay, and what, if anything, can we, I guess, glean from the level of that substance in the blood?
Sure, this level of 25 nanograms per milliliter is consistent with literature values, consistent with a therapeutic use.
Okay, and how about the remaining, the last four substances? What do those sort of reflect?
Sure, the 11-hydroxy delta-9 THC, delta-9 carboxy THC, delta-9 THC. Those are indicative of cannabis use, marijuana.
And are some of those metabolites or?
Right. Yes, the 11-hydroxy and the delta-9 carboxy would be metabolites of the delta-9 THC. The delta-9 THC being your main psychoactive ingredient in marijuana.
And based on the Ambien, the combination of Ambien and marijuana in the blood, is there anything that you can say about the effects, if any, on someone's central nervous system of having that sort of level of these substances in their blood?
It's possible the person may have been exhibiting some central nervous system depression, maybe some sleepiness. It's just going to depend on this individual's frequency of use, their tolerance. But I can't give a specific answer.
Okay. And I guess within a reasonable degree of scientific certainty, can you say anything else about the effects on somebody based on having these substances in their blood system?
As I said, this person may have been feeling some sleepiness. That's probably the extent that I can say, but I can't say for sure to what extent.
Okay, thank you. Nothing further.
Good afternoon.
Hi.
Hi. Now, let's speak about this GHB.
Yeah.
Okay. You indicated that this could, I guess, be a naturally occurring substance in somebody's body.
Yes, can.
Okay. Do you know what the normal levels of this particular substance would be in somebody's body?
Typically, we consider less than about 30 to 50 to be consistent with endogenous levels.
Okay. And would you agree that GHB has a pretty high rate of which the body metabolizes it?
GHB does have a fast half-life,
Okay.
and that means that the body can metabolize it fairly quickly.
Okay. And would you agree that that half-life is between 30 and 50 minutes?
I would say it's about half an hour to an hour and a half.
Okay. So hypothetically, if somebody would have had say for instance, a date rape drug, that's what you call it, correct, or roofies, several hours prior to there being an autopsy or an analysis on what's in their system, you would agree that that particular level could drop to a substantial level where it would appear that this was a naturally occurring substance in the body.
It would have to depend on the dose and that amount of time, the amount of time that it would take for the body to metabolize.
Okay, but it's possible that somebody could take or be slipped a date rape drug or roofies several hours prior to a death or autopsy, and then there's an analysis, and in that analysis, the levels in the body drop so much that it would appear to an individual who's doing the analysis that this is a naturally occurring substance in the body, opposed to being administered it, if that makes sense.
Yes, I'm going to see if I can clarify it as I talk it out. If an individual was exposed and possibly, say, 6 to 8 hours-ish, it could potentially be at an endogenous level.
Okay. What about 3 to 4 hours? Based upon, it'll depend on the individual, correct? Like their body mass, whether or not they've, I guess, taken this substance before.
It's going to depend very specifically on the individual and their individual metabolic capabilities and the dose that was provided.
Okay. Do you know when what time the autopsy would have been performed or that blood sample extracted?
According to this report, the sample was collected by the medical examiner's office on October 21st, 2023.
Do you know what time?
Oh, excuse me. Sorry. Yeah, 1800 hours to 6 p.m.
Okay, 6 p.m. Okay. And if the person had potentially died around 1 a.m., 1:30 a.m. on October the 21st, which is some 5 hours, well, more than 5 hours. I can do my math right now. 16 hours, some 16 hours after death that the blood was extracted. Would that have some type of impact possibly on whether or not somebody could be able to determine whether or not this was a naturally occurring substance in the body versus somebody being administered it?
It would depend on when it was administered in relation to the time of death, not necessarily the time of the autopsy.
Okay.
If it was administered closely to the time of death, I would expect it to be elevated.
Okay.
Because when the person dies, the body stops metabolizing. So if there was a significant amount in their body when they were deceased, that would, in my opinion, be reflected on the report. And even with a post-mortem interval until autopsy of 16 hours, I wouldn't expect it to drop significantly.
Okay.
Something about BHB is we worry more about it being produced post-mortem. So sometimes it can be slightly elevated, not necessarily to the point where it would change the interpretation, but
Okay. So wonder if hypothetically the person was administered this GHB around midnight
okay,
or 12:30ish,
okay.
and they actually died around maybe 4:20ish when they actually died.
Okay.
Could that half-life maybe give a false interpretation of whether or not this particular substance was administered or naturally occurring in the body?
So the 4-hour
4 hour.
interval,
Yes.
again, it's going to be very dependent on this person's metabolic capabilities. I would still expect to see, again, it's also going to depend on what the dose is too. If this person was given a dose to cause a slight stupor versus a dose that would possibly cause deep sedation, that would also have to be a factor in too.
Okay.
So I could expect a higher result even after 4 hours.
Okay. Would you agree that GHB lowers the blood pressure in a person?
It is it's a sedative hypnotic. So yes, it's going to cause depressive effects on the body.
Okay. Now, in a hypothetical situation, if somebody were to ingest this substance and say, for instance, they were stabbed, could that possibly slower the rate of which somebody bled out if they were under the influence and they had a lower blood pressure?
I think that would be a better question for a medical doctor.
Okay, so you're not sure. Okay. But you agree that it does lower the blood pressure, correct?
I believe it causes sedative effects, which could, yes, include lowering blood pressure, lowering heart rate.
Okay. And would you also agree that THC also would lower blood pressure and lower the heart rate?
It's possible it can. It can also increase.
Okay. And it's possible that a combination of GHB and THC could lower the blood pressure and heart rate maybe to a significant degree. Not to death, but to a significant degree, or more than normal. I'll rephrase that, I'm sorry.
If a person was given 2 drugs that could cause sedating effects, it could cause lowering of, yes, heart rate, lowering of blood pressure, but again, I can't see how that would affect this individual.
Okay. Would possibly Ambien, does that lower the blood pressure and or heart rate?
It could.
Okay. Thank you. No further questions.
Nothing.
Questions from the jury? Have a good day.
The people call Officer Allison Baker from Kalamazoo.
Chelsea, you want to take down the last bit?
Oh, sorry.
Good afternoon. Please state your
My first name is Allison, Allison. Last name is Baker, Baker.
Thank you, Your Honor. Ma'am, could you tell the jury what you do for a living?
Currently, I work for the crime lab for Kalamazoo Department of Public Safety. At the time of this incident, I was a public safety officer.
And what were your responsibilities as a public safety officer with Kalamazoo?
As a public safety officer, we respond to police-related matters along with trained firefighters and medical first responders.
And how long had you been a public safety officer before joining the crime lab with Kalamazoo?
Just about 7 years.
And back on, November 7th of 2023, were you a public safety officer in Kalamazoo at that point?
Yes, I was.
And on that particular evening, did you happen to be dispatched to a Four Points Sheraton Hotel in Kalamazoo?
Yes, I did.
And what was the purpose of you getting dispatched to that location?
It was a check welfare / medical call for service.
Okay, and when you went to that location, did you have any interaction with a particular person?
Yes, I did.
And who did you interact with?
Jeffrey Herbstman.
And when you interacted with him, can you, I guess, describe for the jury what was his condition like? What was his demeanor?
My initial contact with him, he was very anxious. He had called because he was having a panic attack. He was shaking, crying, breathing heavily, and appeared to be having a panic attack.
And did you happen to see whether he was near a vehicle or with a vehicle?
When I arrived on scene, he was sitting in the driver's seat of his personal vehicle.
And what type of vehicle was that?
It was a black two-door coupe Volkswagen.
And do you remember the license plate for that vehicle?
Not off the top of my head.
Did you ultimately make a police report in connection with this run that you had?
Yes.
And if you looked at a copy of that report, would that potentially refresh your recollection as to the license plate
Yes,
number?
I have it right here.
And you have a copy
Yeah.
with you? Okay. If you could take a look at that and let us know when your recollection's been refreshed.
Yes, the license plate was a Michigan license plate 5MJC37.
Okay, and after after your interaction with Mr. Herbstman in the parking lot, where did he go from there immediately?
He immediately exited the vehicle upon my initial contact with him and proned out on the parking lot on the ground.
And I guess what I'm asking, if I can clarify, is after the totality of your interaction with him in that parking lot, where did he go from there, if you know?
He went to our headquarters, our KDPS headquarters.
Okay, and what happened to his vehicle at that point?
It was impounded.
And what does it mean for a vehicle to get impounded?
So we have a tow truck company that we work with. They tow it, and then we had it taken back to our KDPS headquarters where it was secured in a bay. It can't be released to the owner. It's in our custody, basically.
And before that vehicle was impounded, did you have an opportunity to perform a search of the vehicle?
Yes.
And when you searched the vehicle, did you recover anything of significance?
Yes. In the, dashboard, like on the left side of his steering wheel, there was a little compartment, and I located a blue folding pocket knife.
And if you took a look at that knife, would you recognize it?
Yes.
When you collected the knife, what did you do with it?
I collected it, and then I turned it over to PSO Ostrander, who was my partner at the scene.
Okay. And I'm holding what has been marked as proposed exhibit 29. May I approach, Your Honor? And recognizing that this disassembled at this point in time?
Yes.
But does that appear to look like the knife that you collected?
Yes.
Okay, Your Honor, I would move to admit proposed exhibit. Yes.
this envelope that the knife was in, does that appear to be an evidence envelope from the Detroit Police Department?
Yes.
And does that have some markings on it from the Michigan State Police Crime Laboratory?
Yes.
But the knife itself, other than the fact that it's not disassembled, does that appear to be the knife that you collected from Mr. Kirkman's vehicle on
Yes.
November 7th?
Correct.
Your Honor, with that, I move to admit Exhibit 29.
Exhibit 29 will be admitted.
Thank you, nothing further.
Good afternoon, officer.
Good afternoon.
Now, when you first arrived to this parking lot in Fort Point, Sheraton, you located Mr. Herbst's car, correct?
Yes.
And immediately he stated, I know I'm in trouble, correct?
Correct.
He exited the car, correct?
Yes.
Okay, and you asked him if he had any weapons, correct?
Yes.
Okay, and he indicated, in fact, he had a knife inside of the car, correct?
Yes.
He never told you that this particular knife was to break windows or cut seatbelts, did he?
No.
And he was stating to you that he killed his girlfriend, correct? That was your understanding, correct?
Correct.
And at one point in time, he stated twice, I remember, correct?
Yes.
And then when you asked him what he remembered, he didn't give you an answer, correct?
Correct.
And you did some independent research yourself, and you came to the conclusion that, in fact, Samantha Woll was murdered in Detroit, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And at some point in time, he was detained, correct?
Correct.
Okay, as part of a criminal investigation, correct?
Yes.
And he was then transported to Kalamazoo headquarters?
Yes.
Thank you. No further questions.
Just briefly, I just want to show you briefly what has been admitted as Exhibit 28. And if you could just take a look sort of behind you for a moment.
I'll come around to the other side.
And Your Honor, is this for impeachment purposes or refresh your memory, or?
What I want to ask is, this exhibit that we're looking at, Exhibit 28, is that from your body-worn camera?
Yes, it is.
And to the best of your knowledge, would that body-worn camera capture the totality of the interaction that you had with Jeff Bergson back on November 7th, 2023?
Yes.
When you were interacting with Mr. Bergson, did you ever hear him directly say the words, I killed Samantha?
When he exited the vehicle, I didn't notice it until I watched my body camera back, and it sounded to me as if he said, I killed her when he exited his vehicle. So that's, yeah.
But when you were with him, did you hear that?
When I was with him, I didn't hear it.
Okay, and if we listen to the first roughly minute of this video, would that include the area where you believe you heard
Yeah.
him say that?
It should be within the first minute.
And Your Honor, is he trying to impeach her? She stated what she believes she heard. So whether or not he plays the video back and tries to impeach her and she changes her mind on what she thought she heard, I don't believe that's proper. She indicated that she thought she heard something. She doesn't need her memory to be refreshed at all.
He's gonna impeach her. Or,
I mean, how would
it's
he,
already been admitted,
right,
so.
but how would he impeach her on what she thought she heard? I don't know if he can impeach her on what she felt that she heard.
It's an admitted exhibit, you can play it, so.
But it's for a proper purpose, though. I mean, it has to be for a proper purpose. And I believe this is a proper purpose.
I'm not sure how it would at all be improper for me to question a witness on the stand about her own body-worn camera footage that's already been admitted as an exhibit. And I'm going to start playing at 10 seconds into the video.
Hi. Can you open the door? Can you open the door for me?
I know I'm in trouble.
No, you're okay. What's going on? You can sit in the car if you want.
No.
What's going on? What? You said he witched her under.
Turn on your body cam, please.
Yeah.
I just recorded.
What's going on, sir? What's your name?
I don't remember. I don't remember any.
And just stopping at 44 seconds in, is that where later on when you review this video, you thought that you heard him say, I killed her and I don't remember?
Correct.
Okay. And, but you didn't clearly hear that when you spoke with him at the time, is that right?
Right.
And the video just kind of is what it is at this point, right?
Correct.
Okay, thank you. Nothing further.
Officer, do you still feel that based upon your knowledge and reviewing of the body cam, you still feel he said that, correct?
I feel like you didn't.
Okay, thank you. No further questions.
Thank you.
The people called forensic scientist Kyle Koppel.
Good afternoon. State your name and spell for the record.
My name is Kyle Koppel, KYLEKONKOL.
Please pull the mic just a little closer to you.
Thank you, Your Honor. Sir, can you tell the jury what it is you do for a living?
I'm a forensic scientist for the Michigan State Police at the Grand Rapids Forensic Laboratory.
And as part of your work as a forensic scientist with the Michigan State Police, do you have any particular areas of specialization?
I am mainly employed as a forensic scientist in the body fluid identification unit, but I also serve a role on the crime scene response team.
And what is the crime scene response team?
We cover 18 counties in southwestern Michigan where we respond to crime scenes of various high-profile crimes such as homicides, officer-involved shootings, and sexual assaults. But we also process vehicles that are sometimes delivered to our laboratory associated with those types of crimes as well.
And you also mentioned work in the field of body fluid identification, is that correct?
Correct.
What is the field of body fluid identification?
As a forensic scientist in the body fluid identification unit, my primary role is to screen items of evidence for common body fluids such as blood, semen, and saliva. But I also analyze items of evidence for any source of DNA such as trace or contact DNA and hairs as well.
And how long have you been working in the field of body fluid identification?
Just under 3 years.
And what sort of training do you have to be able to perform the type of analysis that you do in connection with your work in the area of body fluid identification?
I have a Bachelor of Science degree from Northern Michigan University, and I also completed a very in-depth year-long training program upon my promotion to forensic scientist in the body fluid identification unit, which consisted of many required readings, casework observations of already trained analysts, as well as mock casework and a mock testimony training that culminated in a mock trial.
And in terms of the methods that you use in the field of body fluid identification with the Michigan State Police, are those methods something that you just came up with or that are used and accepted more generally within the scientific community?
All of the methods that we employ in the BFI unit of the Michigan State Police are widely accepted in the greater forensic science community.
Thank you. And Your Honor, I would move to have the witness qualified as an expert in the body fluid identification.
Okay, so this witness's testimony will be accepted in the field of body fluid identification. You can proceed with your questions about his witness.
Thank you, Your Honor. And sir, in connection with your work, specifically with the crime scene response team, did you have an opportunity to process a particular vehicle back on the days of November 8th and November 9th of 2023?
Yes, I processed a black Volkswagen.
And where was that vehicle located at the time that you processed it?
When we processed it, it was located in our secure laboratory processing bay, which is a separate area from the rest of our laboratory areas.
When you processed the vehicle, were you alone or were you with other members of the crime scene response team?
Typically on the crime scene response team, we have multiple individuals that work together to process vehicles and crime scenes. So I worked on this vehicle with forensic scientist Grace Bomarito and forensic technician Katie Favalli.
And what was your primary sort of purpose for processing this specific vehicle?
This vehicle was submitted to us to search for possible blood that may have been transferred to the vehicle from a suspected homicide scene in Metro Detroit.
And what sort of methods were available to you to use to search the vehicle for possible blood?
So we used a initial bright light search. We like to start with the least destructive methods as possible. So we did a bright light search with just a regular flashlight, looking for areas of red-brown staining that we believe could be possible blood. Once we identify any areas we want to test further, we moved on with a hemosticks test, which is essentially a paper test strip that has a yellow test zone at the end. When a sample of possible blood is touched to that test zone, they'll change from yellow to blue-green. And then we also did luminol on this vehicle, which is a chemical reagent that needs to be sprayed in the dark. And any areas of suspected blood will illuminate blue in the dark.
Okay. And other than those methods, was there anything else that you and the rest of the team did to search for possible blood in the vehicle?
Those were the only methods that we employed for this vehicle.
And can you just describe the basic procedure for searching a vehicle that was employed in this case?
So our standard procedure is to first take general photographs and documentation or notes of the vehicle as it has arrived to us. From that point, we'll do a general inventory of all the contents of the vehicle. In this type of case where we know we want to search the entire vehicle for suspected blood, we also removed all the contents and photographed them outside of the vehicle. After, as I described previously, we did a initial bright light search throughout the entire interior and exterior of the vehicle for possible red-brown staining. We also did a visual search of all the contents that were in the vehicle as well.
And you mentioned that some photos were taken. Did I send you a selection of those photos in advance of you testifying today?
Yes, you did.
And do those photos that I sent, did you have an opportunity to review those photos?
I did.
And do those photos fairly and accurately depict what you actually observed when you searched this particular vehicle?
Yes, they did.
And I'm holding what's been marked as proposed exhibit 33. It's a disc. Is it your understanding that the photos are contained on this specific disc?
That is my understanding.
Your Honor, I move to admit proposed exhibit 33. Thank you, Your Honor. And did you also document the findings in connection with your search in a laboratory report?
Yes, we did.
And would that laboratory report be under Michigan State Police Laboratory number MD23-3317?
Yes, record 10 of that laboratory number.
And I'm holding what's been marked as proposed exhibit 32. May I approach, Your Honor?
You may.
Is this a copy of the report that you completed in connection with this case?
Yes, this is a copy of my report.
And does that report fairly and accurately depict the sort of analysis and the results of your processing of this vehicle in this case?
Yes, it does.
Your Honor, I move to admit proposed exhibit 32 as well.
No,
You to also be admitted.
And I want to ask you some questions about some of the photos in Exhibit 33. So if we look at page 3 of Exhibit 33, what's this vehicle that is depicted here?
That is a black Volkswagen EOS, and that is the vehicle I processed on November 8th and 9th of 2023.
And just for the record, what was the license plate number associated with that vehicle?
The license plate is 5MJC37.
Okay, and I want to direct your attention just to 3 specific photos, starting with page 93. What are we looking at in terms of what's depicted on page 93 of Exhibit 33?
So in the trunk of the vehicle, there was a black backpack and suitcase. Our standard procedure is to do a visual and photo inventory of all the contents of the vehicle. So we took a photograph of items that were contained within that black suitcase. So I believe those were prescription pills and like general over-the-counter drugs from the black suitcase.
Okay, and I want to just zoom in. This particular bottle that's depicted now toward the upper middle portion of the screen. Can you spell the name for the record of this particular prescription?
Of the drug itself?
Yes, if you can spell that, just for the record.
It is AUVELITY.
And how about the one directly to the right of it?
Is REXULTI.
In terms of the items that you tested in the vehicle, did any items test positive for the possible presence of blood?
Yes, there was a light blue gift bag in the trunk of the vehicle that had a stain that tested positive for the possible presence of blood with hemosticks. And then there was a gray dog leash and harness in the front passenger seat of the vehicle that had a stain on it that also tested positive for the possible presence of blood with hemosticks.
Okay, and if we go to page 120 of Exhibit 33, what's depicted here?
That is the blue gift bag from the trunk.
And what area of that bag did you test using hemosticks?
So the white placard or the white sticker label is showing the area that I was tested is the area directly below that white sticker.
And when you use hemosticks to test for the possible presence of blood, can you just again describe for the jury just what that process looks like as a general matter?
So I take a wetted cotton swab. A swab is pretty much just like a longer Q-tip with cotton only at one end. I put a little sterile water on that and then swab up a little bit of the staining on the gift bag. Then the staining on that swab was touched to that test area of the hemosticks. So that yellow area then turned blue-green, indicating a positive result.
And in terms of what sort of level of granularity in terms of results are you able to achieve using hemosticks? How much information can you get from a positive finding using hemosticks?
Hemosticks is not specific to a certain type of blood, so just because we have a hemosticks positive result, that does not necessarily mean it's human blood. It could be the blood of any species.
Okay, so does it differentiate between human blood and dog blood?
No, it does not.
So would dog blood hypothetically get a positive finding using hemosticks?
It would.
Hypothetically, would juice from meat produce a positive finding potentially using hemosticks?
As long as that juice had a blood component to it with hemoglobin, then yes.
And in terms of further differentiating and further analyzing the positive finding in this case, is that something that you did, or did that get passed on to somebody else?
I did not do any further analysis on this item. I forwarded it on to the Metro Detroit laboratory for further testing.
And at the Metro Detroit laboratory, are there methods based on your experience in the field of body fluid identification that can achieve a level of specificity in determining whether this is human blood or non-human blood?
Yes, there are additional tests available that can discriminate between human and non-human blood.
Okay, and I want to ask you also about page 136 on exhibit 33. What are we looking at here?
So this is item LV2, which is the gray leash and dog harness.
And did you use hemosticks to test for the possible presence of blood on that item?
I did.
And what was the result on that item?
It was hemosticks positive as well.
Okay. And again, for purposes of the positive finding with respect to that item, did you do any further analysis, or was that something that was passed along to somebody else to do?
I did not do any further analysis. This item was also passed on to the Metro Detroit laboratory.
And other than these two items that we've discussed, the gift bag and the dog leash harness, did you locate any possible or suspected blood on any other items or in any other areas of the car?
There were areas throughout the vehicle that tested luminol positive, so the blue glowing test that I discussed previously, but we followed all of those areas up with hemosticks because it's more discriminatory for blood than luminol is, and all of those indicated a negative result. So there were no additional areas that were collected that were blood positive or positive for the possible presence of blood throughout the vehicle.
And how thoroughly would you say this vehicle was searched?
I would say very thoroughly.
Okay, thank you. Nothing further.
Good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon.
Couple questions. You indicated that you were asked to do this analysis of this car or search of the car in relation to a murder.
It was portrayed to me as a suspected homicide, yes.
And were you aware of when that homicide may have happened?
We had access to the search warrant, but I don't recall the exact dates of when it occurred.
And do you know when you would have performed this search on the car?
What days I analyzed it on?
Yes.
We analyzed it on November 8th and November 9th of 2023.
And you indicated that you did a very thorough search of this car, correct?
That is correct, as we do with all vehicles.
Okay. If we can go to slide number 50. And just for the record, can you indicate what that blue object is that was found inside the front passenger floor again?
That blue bag in the baggie,
Yes.
it appears to be disposable gloves.
Disposable gloves? And this was in the passenger compartment of the car, correct?
It was on the floor of the front passenger seat area.
Would you agree or describe these gloves as blue surgical gloves?
Somebody could describe them as that, but I would just call them disposable gloves.
Did you do any further analysis on these gloves?
We did not.
Thank you. No further questions. One more question. If we can go to slide number 52, I'm sorry. What is What did that appear to be? This black object? What is that?
We described it in our notes as a black mat. We didn't know for sure what it was, though.
It's a mat.
A mat, yes.
Okay.
Did you observe any suspected blood visually on the blue gloves?
We did not.
Thank you.
Any further questions from the jury? I don't see any hands. Thank you, sir.
Just to confirm, I am released.
Yes.
Yes. If we're gonna take like a 9-minute recess or less, let's make it 5 and we need more, please. Just use the restrooms real quick, so jury, go to the jury room for a moment. Hopefully it's cooled off in there. I think they'll cool it down, so it should be better.
All rise for the jury. You may be seated.
Your client need,
Oh, okay. Okay.
can't go. Right now. Can you turn on
Oh,
the
okay.
camera, please?
My name is Miranda Kamsa, Mirandacomsa.
Ma'am, could you please tell the jury what you do for a living?
Sure, I'm a forensic scientist with the Michigan State Police, currently at the Metro Detroit Forensic Laboratory.
And do you have a specific area or field of focus in your work as a forensic scientist?
Yes, I work in the biology unit doing body fluid identification testing.
And how long have you been doing body fluid identification testing?
A little over 9 years.
And what sort of training or experience do you have in that specific field?
I have a bachelor's degree in biology from Oakland University. And then once I was employed as a forensic scientist in the biology unit, I went through a training program, which lasted approximately 6 months. And during that training program, I learned how to handle evidence, collect swabs from evidence, and the various tests that we use to test for various body fluids.
And have you ever testified as an expert?
Yes, I have.
How many times would you say you testified?
Over 40 times.
Ready to go?
All rise for the jury.
May be seated. On the record in People versus Michael Jackson-Bolanos, and open the record, all parties are present, including Jackson-Bolanos. There are 15 jurors returned to courtroom. So ready to continue with the evidence.
Thank you, Your Honor. The people call forensic scientist Miranda Kamsa.
You sound what I want from you. I do.
That might come out. Please state your name and spell for the record.
My name is Miranda Kamsa, Mirandacomsa.
Thank you, Your Honor. Ma'am, could you please tell the jury what you do for a living?
Sure, I'm a forensic scientist with the Michigan State Police, currently at the Metro Detroit Forensic Laboratory.
And do you have a specific area or field of focus in your work as a forensic scientist?
Yes, I work in the biology unit doing body fluid identification testing.
And how long have you been doing body fluid identification testing?
A little over 9 years.
And what sort of training or experience do you have in that specific
I have a bachelor's degree in biology from Oakland University. And then once I was employed as a forensic scientist in the biology unit, I went through a training program, which lasted approximately 6 months. And during that training program, I learned how to handle evidence, collect swabs from evidence, and the various tests that we use to test for various body fluids.
And have you ever testified as an expert previously in the field of body fluid identification?
Yes, I have.
And how many times would you say you testified as an expert in that field?
Over 40 times.
Your Honor, if there are no questions, I'd move to admit the witnesses, move to qualify the witness as an expert in the field of body fluid identification.
No objection. Okay, this witness's testimony will be accepted as an expert in the field of body fluid identification. Follow up with regard to this case.
Thank you, Your Honor. And ma'am, in connection with the homicide of Samantha Woll, did you do some body fluid identification analysis?
Yes, I worked under evidence that was submitted to our laboratory and ultimately authored 2 reports for the laboratory number associated with this case.
Okay, and I want to talk about both reports. I'm holding what's been marked as People's Proposed Exhibit 35. May I approach? 11. Does Proposed Exhibit 35 appear to be one of the reports that you authored in this case?
Yes, this is my report under the laboratory number MD23-3317, record number 11.
Okay, and what evidence did you analyze in connection with that report?
I received 2 pieces of evidence which were collected from a vehicle. One of them was a blue gift bag and the other was a gray dog leash/harness.
And I want to show you a couple of photos that have already been admitted as part of People's Exhibit 33. And looking at page 122 of Exhibit 33, does this item look familiar to you?
This is not an image I took, but it does look consistent with the blue gift bag that I received.
Okay, and looking at page 136 of Exhibit 33, how about this item?
Again, this is not a photograph that I took, but it does appear consistent with the item that I received.
Okay, and what you're holding that's been marked as Proposed Exhibit 35, does that document your findings with respect to body fluid identification analysis of these 2 specific items?
Yes, it is.
And does that report that's marked as Proposed Exhibit 35 fairly and accurately depict your findings in connection with the work that you did?
Yes, it does.
Your Honor, I move to admit Proposed Exhibit 35.
35 will be admitted.
And may I publish? Now, what sort of methods did you use to analyze the 2 items that we just discussed?
I did a few different blood tests on the items that I received. If I may explain how I received the items.
Sure.
Both items I received, I was notified that they had staining present that tested positive with a test called Chemistix during the vehicle processing that was done at our Grand Rapids Forensic Laboratory. So for both of the items that I received, I did some follow-up testing on the specific staining that was previously tested. I did a test called Chematrace, and that test is specific for human blood. I also did some additional presumptive testing with both Chemistix as well as a chemical presumptive test called phenolphthalein, which works very similarly to Chemistix. So I did all 3 of those tests on these items.
Okay, and starting with the blue gift bag, when you used Chematrace to determine whether there was human blood, what was the finding?
I tested one of the red-brown stains that was indicated as the one that had been previously tested as Chemistix positive. I took a sample from that staining and tested it with Chematrace, and I got a negative result. So there was no indication of human blood in that particular staining.
And using the Chemistix test, did you test the same area that was already tested, or did you test a different area of the blue gift bag?
No, I did not test the same area that was already tested. I tested 3 different areas of staining that looked like they could be consistent with blood, and I got a negative result with the Chemistix, so there was no indication of blood on any of the additional staining that I tested.
And you also mentioned phenolphthalein. Did you test the blue gift bag with phenolphthalein?
No, I did not.
Okay. And moving to the dog leash, did you test the dog leash with Hematrace?
Yes. So similarly, I located the area that was marked and indicated as having been Hemastix positive during the vehicle processing. I did the follow-up testing with Hematrace on that particular area, and I got a negative result. So there was no indication of human blood in that staining. After that, I then searched the item for additional areas that looked consistent with possible blood. I tested 2 stains with the phenolphthalein test, which again is a chemical presumptive test, and got positive results for 2 additional areas. And then on a 3rd area, I got a negative result with the phenolphthalein.
And does the does phenolphthalein, does that test distinguish between human and animal blood?
No, it does not. So both Hemastix and phenolphthalein work very similarly. They're both chemical presumptive tests, and they work based on a color change reaction. So if I get a positive Hemastix or a positive phenolphthalein test, that's an indication of that possible blood is present, but it is not specific for human blood.
And other than, I guess, Hematrace, is there any other method that you could have utilized to distinguish between possible non-human blood and human blood?
The only test available for me in the laboratory to make that determination is the Hematrace test.
And the Hematrace test results here were all what when it came to the possible presence of human blood?
Negative on both items. And if I could clarify, that I also did do the Hematrace tests on the 2 additional areas that I tested on the dog leash, and both of those were also Hematrace negative.
Okay. Did you also do some analysis of some other items that were received by the laboratory in this case?
Yes, I did.
And when it came to those other items, did you create a separate report?
Yes, I did.
And I'm holding what's been marked as proposed exhibit 34. May I approach, Your Honor? With respect to the other items that you analyzed, does the report that's been marked as proposed exhibit 34 document your findings with respect to your analysis?
Yes, exhibit 34 is a copy of my laboratory report, record number 7, which is 4 pages in length with my signature on the last page, and it outlines the testing that I did on these pieces of evidence.
And does that report that's been marked as proposed exhibit 34 fairly and accurately reflect the analysis that you did in connection with those items?
Yes, it does.
Your Honor, I move to admit proposed exhibit 34.
Exhibit 34 will also be admitted.
And just briefly, I want to run through the evidence received section of your report. And can we just run through this list, starting with the first item that was received? What was the first item?
The first item was container number 18, which contained a green vape pen.
And what was the next item?
The next item, container number 19, contains 2 sets of swabs, which I itemized as 19A and 19B. 19A were the right-hand swabs from Samantha Woll, and 19B were the left-hand swabs from Samantha Woll.
And what was the next item received?
Container number 20, which I did not open, but was identified as containing a LaCroix can, or I'm sorry, swabs from a LaCroix can.
And what was the next item?
The next item is container number 21, which contains swabs from an upstairs drawer handle.
And how about the next item?
The next item, container number 22, again, I did not open, but was reportedly containing swabs of another LaCroix can.
And the next item after that?
Container number 23, which was, again, I did not open, but was identified as containing swabs from an interior passenger door of a Chevy.
And the next item?
Container number 29, which contained item number 29, which was a folding knife.
And the next item?
Container number 33, which contained a black lanyard.
And the next item?
Container number 34, which contained a pair of black boots.
And moving to the next page, what were the remaining items?
Container number 35 contained a folding knife with a black handle, and container number 36 contained a folding knife with a blue handle.
And in terms of the items that you didn't open, was there any reason why, in connection with your specific type of analysis, you didn't open those items?
We had a phone call conversation with the submitting agency to go through the remaining evidence on this case, as there was a lot of pieces of evidence. And at that point, the items that I did open were the pieces of evidence that were prioritized, and we were advised that at the time we did not need to open, or I did not need to open the items or the containers that weren't opened, the LaCroix cans and the swabs from the interior passenger door.
And your analysis here documented on this report, what was the sort of primary objective of your analysis?
Most of the items I was searching for possible blood.
Okay, and starting with the green vape pen, did you test that item for the presence of possible blood?
Yes, I did.
And what was the result of that?
I tested one of the red-brown stains present on the vape pen with the phenolphthalein test and got a positive result indicating the possible presence of blood. For that item, I swabbed some of the possible blood staining to preserve, but did not send that for DNA testing. With this item, I actually swabbed what looked like the mouthpiece of the vape pen, as well as the button on the vape pen, for possible skin cells or saliva that might have been left behind by someone using the item. Those swabs were then sent forward for DNA testing.
And how about the hand swabs of the victim? Did you test those items for possible blood?
Yes, I did. Both the right hand and the left hand swabs had staining that looked consistent with blood. So I took a small cutting. So I simply took a scalpel and took a small portion of the cotton material stained with the possible blood staining and tested that with phenolphthalein. For both sets of swabs, I received a positive result indicating the possible presence of blood. I then cut the entire remaining material to send for DNA testing.
Okay, and how about the upstairs drawer handle swabs? Did you do anything with that particular item?
With that item, there was no staining that appeared consistent with blood, so I simply cut all of the cotton portion off of the swabs and placed it into a tube for DNA testing.
And the next item indicated on the bottom of page 2 was was described as a folding knife. Did you examine that for the possible presence of blood?
I did. I examined the folding knife under a bright magnifying light and identified multiple areas to test with the phenolphthalein test, and all of the areas that I tested were negative, so that item did not indicate the possible presence of blood.
And how about the black lanyard indicated as the next item?
Yes, that item I also removed and examined under a bright magnifying light as well as under a stereo microscope, and identified areas of interest to test with the phenolphthalein test. All of the areas that I tested were negative, so there was no indication of blood on that item.
And I just want to move down to the final 2 items. The item described as a folding knife with a black handle, did you examine that for the possible presence of blood?
Yes, I did.
And what was the results of your examination?
All of the areas that I tested were negative, so there was no indication of blood on that item.
Okay, and just for the record, that specific item, is that indicated with by the agency number of 113?
If I may review.
Yes, yeah.
Yes, that one was listed as agency item number 113, and I itemized as our laboratory item number 35.
Okay, and how about the blue folding knife? What was the agency number associated with that?
That was listed as agency item number 117.
Okay, and I'm holding what's been marked as already admitted as Exhibit 29. Can I approach your honor? Do you see an agency number on that item?
Yes, I do.
And what is the agency number on that?
It is on the Detroit Police Department tag at the top of the container, and it is listed as 117.
Okay, and that number would be consistent with the blue folding knife that you analyzed?
Yes, and it is also listed with our Michigan State Police Laboratory container number 36, and also has my initials and seal on the envelope.
And did you, looking at the bottom of page 3 on your report, did you analyze the blue folding knife for the possible presence of blood?
Yes, I did.
And what were the results of that analysis?
All of the areas that I found to test with the phenolphthalein test were negative, so there was not an indication of blood on that item.
Thank you, nothing further.
Not too long, maybe.
Well, I mean, if it's not gonna be long, I'd like to get it done and have that back.
I know she's off Thursday. If it's possible to squeeze
Let's
in,
do that.
but I don't want to hold.
Go.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Now, we can look at record number 7, item 36. Where it says apparent hairs and or fibers collected but not examined. Additional apparent hairs observed but not collected or examined. So to be clear, there were some apparent hairs that were found in this particular knife?
Yes, on the item when I removed it, I noticed that there were a couple of possible hairs or fibers, and some of them, which were a little looser on the item, I collected on a sticky note for preservation. And then there were also additional possible hairs or fibers that were very small throughout the surface around the interior of the folding component. So those hairs or fibers I did not collect.
Okay, and the hairs that you did collect, do you know whether or not those were sent out for analysis?
I did not send them for any further analysis, and I did not analyze them at the time.
You do have the capability to analyze suspected hair to see whether or not it's compatible with a known DNA profile, correct?
Our typical process for screening hairs, so what I would do is to look at those possible hairs, fibers. I can determine, one, if it is a hair, if it is a human hair or non-human hair. And if it's a human hair, at that point, I would look to see if there is a root present. If there was a root present, I could at that point send the root forward for DNA testing.
Okay, and your report doesn't reflect whether or not you were able to ascertain if in fact this was a hair or not, correct?
Correct. I simply collected the possible hairs or fibers. I did not look at them further.
And do you have total discretion on whether or not you collect suspected hair and then send it off for processing?
Yes, that would be my decision when I'm processing an item, if I look at the hairs further or if I send any hairs forward for DNA testing.
Okay. If you generate a report where it indicates it's apparent hair that was collected and you send that to the requesting agency, could they in return request that you send that apparent hair off for analysis?
Yes, that is why I list on my report anytime that there were apparent hairs or fibers observed, whether they were collected or not, and even for when I'm testing for body fluids, I will note if there is additional staining that was not tested, so that it's very clear on the report that no examination was done on, in this instance, the hairs or fibers.
Okay, so it'd be fair to say that the requesting agency never requested you to send these apparent hairs off for additional analysis, correct?
No, I never got that request.
Now, record 7 and record 11, they both pertain to a particular suspect, correct?
Record 11, I know I had evidence that was collected from a specific person's vehicle. Record number 7, I know I received evidence that was collected from, I believe, the crime scene. Again, the hand swabs collected from Samantha Woll and some other items as well.
Okay, would it be fair to say that both reports have a victim name on it, correct?
Yes, correct.
And the victim name is Samantha Woll, correct?
Correct.
And both reports have a suspect name on it, correct?
Yes, they do.
And that name is Jeff Hurston, correct?
Yes, that name is listed on both reports.
Now, did you do any type of analysis on any clothes that were potentially collected from a Jeff Hurston?
No, I did not.
from your standpoint, what was the thinking behind not sending the potential hairs or fibers along for further analysis?
When I received the evidence, the specific request for most of the items that I received under record number 7 was to do a blood search. So because I didn't find any areas of possible blood on any of the items, I did not see the need to go further and to do analysis of the possible hairs or fibers on the items.
If hypothetically a knife had blood washed off of it, would you still expect to see the types of fibers left behind that you observed on these items?
If a knife were recently washed, I wouldn't necessarily expect to see many hairs or fibers still remaining on the item as well. If the washing were thorough enough to wash away any blood, it would likely also wash away any hairs or fibers.
Okay, thank you. Nothing further.
And you stated that you wouldn't suspect to see many different hair fibers if the knife was washed. So it's possible that the knife could be washed and there still be some hair samples remaining, correct?
It's hard to say. Again, it would depend on how thorough the washing is. With a folding knife, there are a lot of creases and crevices. So if a hair were to be wedged in some of those areas, it's possible that some of those would remain. If the blade area alone were wiped off, but the handle area weren't submerged, then it could also be possible to see some hairs and fibers still within that handle component.
Okay. Were you aware that this particular crime involved the victim being stabbed in the head?
I was not aware particularly where the victim was stabbed.
If you had that additional information that a potential knife could have been used in the head of the victim, would you have then sent those apparent hair samples off for analysis?
No, it wouldn't have necessarily changed the way that I went about my analysis. Again, my primary goal was to search for areas of possible blood, and considering that I did not find any, I did not see the need to analyze any possible hairs or fibers that were found on the items.
Okay. And that request was generated by the requesting agency on how you, I guess, constructed your scope of your analysis, correct? As far as looking for the blood, correct?
Yes, to the best of my memory, when the items were submitted to the laboratory, they were listed as the request being to search for possible blood.
Okay. And had the request been to search for potential hair, then you may have expanded the scope of your analysis.
If there were a specific request to process the hairs on the knives, then yes, at that point I would have considered doing analysis on the hairs.
No, Your Honor.
Questions from the jury? Thank you, Amy. Please step down. Sorry for keeping you a few minutes late today, but we want to make sure we got our testing done. We will see you. Remember, we're not here tomorrow. Tomorrow is 15 minutes before it's closed. So if you normally work tomorrow, you should go to work. Because your letter from here will not say you were here today or tomorrow. We will resume on Thursday morning, the 20th at 9. Okay? Thank you. Enjoy your day tomorrow.
All rise for the jury.
Hi guys, how you doing? Well, what do you think about this show? Like I keep saying in chat, I just hate the way this channel streams court hearings. They just cut it off. You never know when they're coming live. They never say if they're going on a break or if they're going for lunch. It's a guessing game. It's not like other trials that we watch. We know when they're going on break. We don't get cut off. But this news channel, they just like to cut off everything. Like, done. Now, like I said earlier, I'm recording the Andros trial, day 1. Hold on a minute. They're coming back. Hold on. Not this case. It was the one I'm recording. They've come back. So I can't talk no more right now because I'm recording it.